And thanks to all of you for being here and to Interfaith for hosting this very important conversation. As Connie said, I'm Erin Davison Rippey. I'm with Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. We provide reproductive and sexual health services and education for Iowans and Nebraskans. Up until this fall, our affiliate did also encompass Oklahoma and Arkansas. So I've seen some kind of previews of the kinds of things I hope we are not looking at here in Iowa, but have seen some of these battles play out in other states. So, like Melissa, we find ourselves in a position where we are no longer protected by a majority-controlled Senate that supports reproductive and sexual health issues. We don't have a crystal ball, we don't have tea leaves. You'll see that as a similar theme here throughout. So we can look to what folks have done in the past. But first I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about what the current lay of the land is here in Iowa around these issues. So we think kind of in terms of the three areas of our issues. So we have family planning, and then the sexual health education, particularly for young people, but for young people and adults, and then also access to abortion. So Iowa really is in a good position and has been for a number of years on all three of those issues. And you know, the data is there. You see this nationally, but particularly so in Iowa, that the rate of unintended pregnancies has decreased and the rate of abortions has decreased, even more so in Iowa than across the country. And that is because we have really robust programs. So access to family planning in Iowa, we have a great program called the Iowa Family Planning Network. Planned Parenthood participates in that, but also a wide range of other family planning clinics, private practitioners. What that program does is it provides access to low-income Iowans to family planning services free of charge. It's a Medicaid program, so we utilize an existing infrastructure, a challenging infrastructure right now in the environment of managed care, but an existing infrastructure. And that is provided up to people up to 300% of poverty, which is really, I mean, still is not a lot of money, but is a nice, robust program and is a much higher level than a lot of other states provide those family planning services. So that's a program for men and women and has really provided pregnancy prevention services for folks who, if someone did get pregnant, that 300% of poverty eligibility limit is the same one that someone would qualify for Medicaid if they were pregnant. So it's really a program designed to prevent unintended pregnancies that would otherwise end up being covered under Medicaid. The federal government loves this program, and so they pick up 90% of the bill. Pretty good deal. It means the state of Iowa can spend about $300,000 every year and get a $3 million program providing these services for Iowans. So again, a really good environment. Related to sexual health education, we have really pretty good policies in Iowa. I mean, yes, we could always, you know, improve, update, talk a little bit more about consent or, you know, sexual orientation, gender identity. But Iowa, compared to the rest of the nation, has some pretty good laws. We would love to, you know, have more resources for education systems and others to be able to provide the most robust programs, but Iowa's in pretty good shape. Again, Planned Parenthood is one of many providers around the state that is able to access some state funding programs, grants, to provide those services to young people here in Iowa. And then finally, I'll say access to abortion. The state of Iowa really has honored the constitutionally protected right to privacy that affords women access to abortion. Compared to many other states, women in Iowa have pretty good access to abortion services should they seek that. So we have some restrictions in Iowa that have passed, particularly over the last few years. You may be familiar with a provision that prevents federal funds from being utilized for abortion except in a few cases. About 4 years ago, the state of Iowa passed a provision that requires that the governor would personally sign off on any payments for abortion, those medically necessary abortions provided through Medicaid. Now, what I will tell you is that since that provision was passed 4 years ago, there have not been any abortions billed to Medicaid. So there was sort of this workaround that has happened. University of Iowa Hospitals was the primary provider of those services. And our understanding is that they continue to provide those services when we do still have access, but it's just not being billed to Medicaid. So again, limitations, but generally not limitations that have limited access in an undue burden. Something else that you may have heard about, a few years ago, the Iowa Board of Medicine, which at that point had overturned completely and been entirely appointed by Governor Branstad, very quickly passed a set of rules that prohibited the use of telemedicine for one specific procedure, medication abortion. And that's a pill regimen that allows folks to access abortion early on in pregnancy. So that kind of worked its way through the administrative process, ended up, it was something that we challenged, went to the Iowa Supreme Court, and last summer the Iowa Supreme Court said, no, this is an undue burden, and the Iowa Constitution protects a woman's right to privacy, and that was struck down. So we have a pretty good environment currently. What that means is that there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake. And so as we head into this next session, knowing that we no longer have folks in the Senate holding off all of those bad bills, we are anticipating, potentially, again, the same kind of thing. Are they coming at us with a sledgehammer, or are they going to chip away at access? What we have seen across the country is really the spectrum of strategies from folks who are limiting access to sexual and reproductive health, whether that's family planning or abortion. And those two things, particularly in Iowa, all do get lumped together, and generally we see those issues being voted on along partisan lines. So if we look at what's been done in recent years, there's been an effort to dismantle that great family planning program that I talked about that provides family planning services for low-income Iowans. Because it's a Medicaid program, the federal government says you can't just kind of willy-nilly cut out a qualified provider. So in order to cut out providers like Planned Parenthood, who offer abortion services, they have to switch it to a completely state-funded program. So you remember how we got a $3 million program for only a $300,000 investment by the state of Iowa? Talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. That they were willing to pay the full $3 million for that program with state funds in order to cut out Planned Parenthood as a provider. Doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense, particularly in an environment where everyone tells us that we don't have any money. So we could see something like that happening again. And we have often seen, restrictions to safe and legal abortion passing through the House. What I will tell you is that since I've been doing this work for Planned Parenthood for about 4 years, we have seen somewhat moderated proposals being passed out of the House. They seem to be kind of really honing in on maybe one issue or one or two issues, and not the most extreme versions of legislation. So for instance, we've never seen anything like, the bill that passed out of the legislature in Ohio that banned abortion as soon as a heartbeat was detectable. We have not seen in past years from House leadership an interest in passing bills like that. However, we know that we are in a new environment. We know that folks who are very opposed to access to safe and legal abortion feel emboldened. And there's a new expectation of an ability to get things done that prior to this new makeup, everyone knew that basically the Senate was going to stop these bills. So I think we're in uncharted territory. But as I said, this is not our first rodeo. Planned Parenthood has been around for 100 years, and we will be around for another 100 years and more to follow. We have experienced these kinds of attacks in other states, and so we are looking to folks to stand with us and stand behind us with our fellow partners in the progressive community to really fight back attacks that would hurt Iowans. Thank you.